Thank you, Charlie, for the invitation firstly and the introduction. I'm going to start with a disclaimer, and it's to this effect. This talk is as much of benefit for me as it is to you. You're going to hear quite a few things tonight, and firstly, I want you to know that I am not what I am preaching. I need to do this as much as all of us. So don't presume that, Robert is a great father and, he's speaking from a point of view of doing it always right. I have some strengths and weaknesses, like each and every one of us. When I say fatherhood, keeping it simple, it's because I'm going to focus on one main core thing we should be doing. And then I'll be talking about other optional things that we can do, could do, should do, etc. One thing I've found over the years is that, okay, Charlie said I do give talks here and there, etc., etc. But I've also gone to a lot of talks given by other people. And many of them have been relating to family, raising children, fatherhood, motherhood, etc. And every talk that I've gone to, I've always left very inadequate, that I'm not doing what I should be doing in these areas. And one reason why I feel inadequate is that many of these speakers, and they're mostly Americans, but that's not the reason why they're like this, is because we bring Americans here and Australian people want to listen to American speakers. And to be frank, there's not many other countries in the world with that many great Catholic speakers that speaking in English, that is. A lot of these speakers always list dozens of points that we should be ticking off if we're going to be effective dads and husbands. And I find that rather, well, the word I choose now is dangerous. To give people too many checkpoints. You have to be an effective father, Catholic father, tick, 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 and I don't think any person, any dad, any husband is able to tick off on everything. On a slightly different note, 8 years ago when we had the Australian Catholic Youth Festival here in Sydney, there was one young fellow known to this parish who gives talks, and he gave a talk in front of 400 young adults. And he was talking about relationships and marriage, etc. And he said this: I had a checklist of 80 points that I wanted to find in my future wife. And when I met my future wife, I soon came to realize that she ticked off on each one of those 80 points. And I'm in the room at the back, aghast at what he said. And I actually walked out. I thought to myself, what are you doing? You don't tell young people they're supposed to have a checklist of 80 points before they think they've found the right woman to marry. 80 points. I said to myself, could the Virgin Mary tick off on 80 points? Probably yes. Yes, she can. Not probably. Yes, she can, but no one else could. Don't have checklists about future spouses, but don't have too many checklists on yourself as such. Hope I'm making some sense. There will be some points I'll be making that we should be doing, but this is the core. Fatherhood is about example. This is the core. This is what you have to do. This is what I have to do. Now, all my kids now are adults. My youngest turned 18 at the end of August, so all my kids are adults. So I can say mission accomplished. But not yet, because I'm still a dad and maybe a granddad soon, God willing. So the mission doesn't end until we die. But the stats are in, the data is in, it's irrefutable. Know this number. And I saw it again tonight on an Instagram feed. Where the father practices the faith, the probability that the children will take it up and practice it as well is around 90%. That's daughters and sons. If we as dads practice the faith visibly in front of our children, it's a 90% chance your children will take it up and practice it, both your sons and daughters. If you don't practice the faith in front of your children, that figure drops to 17%. In some surveys, the data, it's even lower than that. Your wife could practice it and practice it well, but if you don't, that figure is going to drop to 17%. If I finish the talk right now, I've said enough. And you leave right now with the conviction, okay, fatherhood, keeping it simple. What must I do? Practice your faith. Everything else I'm going to give you now is just extra layers on the cake and a bit of icing and some sprinkles on top. All right? But that's the core that's not negotiable. There's a mystery here. Why is it that the rate of practice of children is far greater when the dad practices? Because there's something in nature about that. There's something in nature about the man, about the husband, about the father. And I'm not afraid to say it. It's the natural leadership role, God-given leadership role that we have. Whether, despite what radical feminism says out there and all the revolutionary ideas that are out there and all the wokery out there and the LGBTIQA plus agenda out there and transgenderism, they can push their ideologies, their viewpoints, but mostly built on lies. The reality is that man and woman are created by God, and in the Judeo Old Testament, Christian New Testament understanding, the man is the head of the woman, the head of the household, the head of the family. I'll come back later to give greater definition to that, because there are very erroneous ways of understanding that headship that are actually counterproductive, seriously counterproductive. Oh, by the way, here's a joke, right? I'll scare you for a bit. I fully support the LGBTIQA plus agenda. I fully support it. You worried, Charlie? You worried, Charlie? You worried, Charlie? They're my ex-students here. I fully support that. What do I mean? Laity going back to intentional quality adoration of Christ. That's my LGBTQIA plus agenda, all right? We'll talk to Andre about that. That's right. And I support the trans people. The transubstantiation people, the people who go to Mass regularly, who receive the Eucharist, yeah. We shouldn't be afraid about this. The culture, the wreckage of civilization that we are in now is trying to silence us permanently. To be ashamed of who we are, what we believe in, keep it to yourself. Don't put it out there. You're going to offend people. Well, they have no problem in offending God, Jesus Christ, the church, and us continuously. What they want is a monopoly on offense, where they can go on the offensive against us and offend us to the point where, as you saw recently, they are willing to kill us. Right. So we practice the faith. What are the basics? And you know what these are already. We should be seen in front of your children praying. Now, I had a good father. My father believed in God. My father believed in Jesus. My father encouraged us to do that. God rest his soul. He died too young, 58, suddenly of a heart attack, and it shook us terribly, shook up my world, shook up the whole family. I still pray for him every day, and that was a long time ago. That was 37 years ago. But I never saw my dad, for example, pray. But I know he did, but I never saw it. He'd pray in bed, right? I never saw him on his knees. Now, he did believe, but I never saw it. It's good if your children see you praying and see you on your knees from time to time, maybe at home in front of a little shrine in the corner or at church. That's enough. Let them see you pray and on your knees, and they will know that that's part of manhood. It's not just a woman's thing. Probably too much in the last few centuries. Catholicism and the practice of the faith is equated with old women, Italian women, short, excuse me, I don't want to be offensive. This is the stereotype. Short, overweight, old, grey hair, praying the rosary in front of the statue of the Madonna. And men can't associate with that. They don't want to have that image for themselves. But that's a wrong image. We got to show that prayer, being on your knees, praying the rosary, holding the rosary in your hand is also a masculine thing. And that's why it's great to see that rosary group on the first Saturday every month outside the cathedral praying. And by the way, I'm going to go on a lot of tangents tonight, and here's another one. Men's ministry is growing enormously around the world, and this is part of it. I've been in this business for 40 years, since my adult conversion in the mid-80s. And for decades, there was nothing for men. Nothing. When I started in the current job I'm in, faith formation, and I had responsibility for family evangelization, we struggled with what are we going to do for men? Let's put on something on footy nights for them. State of origin nights or something. That was the best we could think of. But now it's an explosion around the world. And there's no doubt it's a movement of the Holy Spirit of some kind. Men need it. Men want it now. Men are looking for it. Men need affirmation as men, not to be told that they have to be something else, right? But to be men and real men. Mass attendance in Australia has dropped to about 10%. You know, that's the official statistic of the Australian Catholic Bishops' Conference. But you know what they deem regular mass attendance to be? Once a month. That's not 10% once a week. That's 10% once a month. So your prayer life, your visible prayer life, includes going to Mass minimum once a week. That might be hard at first. I guarantee you, when I started my Catholic conversion in the mid-80s, it was hard. I'm in my very early 20s, but it was still hard. And when my Catholic friends were pushing me to do more, I was resentful. I was angry. I remember once saying, if I say all these prayers, I'll be praying 30 minutes a day. I was angry. Right? But if you're going to move to regular mass attendance, one thing, you have to choose it freely yourself. But the Holy Spirit will help and make things easier for you, as He did for me. Mass attendance isn't just going to tick a box. It's believing in what the Mass is and what you're receiving. Yes, you're hearing the Word of God, the Scriptures. You're hopefully hearing a good homily. And I can tell you now, our priests today are a lot better than they were in the 80s and 90s. Here and all around us, a lot better. It's never been better. In this monastery here, it has never been better. If I was 20 again, 25 again, and I was thinking of a religious vocation, I would be joining them now, right? And the priests we've got here in St Jerome's, right? And in St Michael's Belfield, and in St Mel's Campsie, and where else? Give me others. St Felix Bankstown, and Lewisham, and Austral. It's never been like this. It's never been this good before. Take advantage of it. As I say to some friends, milk the cow while it's on the paddock, right? It's there. Take advantage of it. If you happen to be not going to regular Mass and you think it's because you haven't got time, you do have time. You'll be surprised. Make the effort and you'll find that you can fit it in every week. Saturday Vigil. We've got so many Mass times now. There's really no excuse. And here's the next challenge. If you are regular, God bless you, once a week, and that's all you need to do. If you are regular, why not do it every day? In the morning. There's some real heroes in this parish. Sometimes when I come to 6:30 Mass in the morning, there's 60, 70 people. 6:30 Mass in the morning. It's incredible. Yeah, they're regular. And they're not all old people. It's a mixture. Some very young, middle-aged, professionals, tradespeople. They're coming here. They're going to Mass before they start work. It's a great blessing to come to Mass and receive the Eucharist more every day. Confession is important. The church says once a year minimum. So I say to you now, if you're not going to confession and haven't been in years, you should be going. You need to be going minimum once a year. It's there. It's a sacrament. Christ gave it to us. The first thing he did after he rose from the dead. Thank you. All right. I don't like normally to move to the left for any reason. All right. All right. For this, I will. Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. No, we leave the jokes in the film. Don't worry. Now, all right. Now, where I was up to, it's confession. First thing Christ did when he rose from the dead, he gave the church the power to forgive sins, power and authority to to hear, confess, or even not to forgive sins if the penitent is not genuine. Minimum once a year. Best once a month. Best once a month. If that's too hard for you, I understand. You don't have to go once a month. But try and do more than once a year. Let your family know you're doing that. That's how your children will more likely do it. Again, we're very blessed in this parish. I don't know of any other parishes in Australia that have confession, except Maronite ones, right? That have confession on during Mass. It's easily accessible here. I've already mentioned the rosary, right? And again, I'll just repeat this one point. It's seen as a feminine thing that men shouldn't be associated with. No. Tell you what, there's some great rosaries being produced now. When I was at Andre's shop the other week, when he opened it up there in Enfield, that one of those guests, the soccer player, he brought me the rosary, an example of a rosary that he produces. They're the rosaries of soldiers, knights, very strong, very beautiful instrument. The rosary I use every day is actually a replica of World War I issue. The US Army issued it to Catholic soldiers in World War I. And it's metallic, it's strong, it's manly. Pray the rosary. And that's, again, let your family see that from time to time. Even if, walking around the house praying the rosary. Now, the ideal is that we pray with our family from time to time. In the car, when you're starting the trip. At the dinner table, at the beginning of meals. On other occasions, here or there. Be with your kids as they're growing up before they go to sleep. You just lead them in a prayer before they go to sleep. That prayer is the glue of the family, or the cement between the bricks. The bricks are there, but they're not very strong unless you've got the cement between them. That prayer with other members of the family is the cement between the bricks of your family. But time to time, you're praying your rosary, just walk around the house, out there in the backyard, let your family see you doing that. And that's a great help, great example. I remember this would have been a long time ago, maybe 15 years ago. I shocked a friend of mine last year when I said, I don't pray the rosary with my family every night. He was shocked. How can you know? Catholic families, you should be praying the rosary with your family every night. Very good Catholic families do. I actually don't. I actually never have. On rare occasions we have, when we're going on a long drive here or there. But I said to my family, this fellow, but everyone in my family from time to time prays the rosary, and some of my children pray it every day. It's not because I force them. Don't force any of your family members to pray. Because if you do that, one day when you're not around, they will drop it. What's more important than forcing is that they've seen your example and they're inspired by it. About 15 years ago, my oldest son was trying to pray the rosary every day. And he'd leave it till night time, 10 p.m., 10:30 p.m., before he went to sleep. And he found it very hard. And he started crying. I said, "Why are you crying?" He said, "I want to pray the rosary. I see you praying the rosary every day. I want to pray the rosary every day, but I can't. It's really hard." And I said, "Drop it. Stop it. Don't force yourself to pray it. One day when you're older, more mature, you'll have the strength to pray it." And that's what's happening now. Freely chose to do it. I once stayed at a family in Perth in 1998 when I was on one of my very first speaking tours there, mid-98. I stayed at a family of a very, very, very good Catholic man, a model for all other Catholic men, and a model for me at the time. And when I stayed in the house, he ran the house like an army. He was a homeschooler. They were dedicated homeschoolers, and there's nothing wrong with that. I fully support that. But it was a regimented army. So the 8 kids, they prayed the rosary on their knees in 2 lines in the kitchen. It's like called to military service, kneel down, pray the. It was like a military. And I was thinking, oh, okay, interesting. Only 2 of those 8 practice of faith now. He tried to do what he believed to be right. His conscience was good Catholic conscience. But there was an element of imposition, force. And when the kids are free, if they feel they've been forced to pray this thing, when they're free, they won't pray it. They have to be inspired to pray it and choose freely to pray it because they're imitating what they believe to be good. All right. Now, we'll move on to the next phase here. By the way, Charlie, when do you want this finished? Where are we? All right. What time did we start? Who can remind me? So I've finished about 8:10 max. All right. Okay. All right. All right. I've got to time myself here so I don't waffle too much. In addition to the prayer, and probably more important than the prayer, dare I say it, more important than the prayer is, your life of integrity, your authenticity. Now, one thing about being a high school teacher, and I was only ever a teacher in one school, and that was here. But the kids in this school are the same as everywhere else, really. When you're teaching teenagers, they got X-ray eyes. They can pick up a fraud from a mile away. So if you're in the classroom as a teacher and you're trying to tell the students, hey, you got to go to mass every week, and you're not, they'll find out. When they find out you're not, they're not going to go because in their minds, you're a hypocrite. If you're teaching the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not lie, and they realize, well, you're a liar when you need to be, then they're not going to be inspired by you at all. They won't stop lying because you've set a bad example. You're a hypocrite. What's very, very important here is that to the best of our ability, we are trying to have a life of integrity. Why I said trying is because we're all sinners, and from time to time we will fail and fail in front of them. And when our children see us fail in front of them, you have to show repentance and a determination to not do that again. Your life of integrity is I would say, even more important than the prayer, though the prayer is not an option. The life of integrity is what's going to inspire them to be moral, not just to pray, but to be moral. So if you're swearing and using profane language often, they're going to do the same. Our culture now is so vulgar. We have standardized F words everywhere as normative. When I was growing up, 60s, 70s, 80s, there was no F words in movies, documentaries, football games, nothing. Zero. Started in the late 80s, through the night. Now we have F bombs all the time. So first point of integrity, don't use foul language. And I was challenged on that by my Baptist friend when I was 15, the one who took me to the Billy Graham Crusade in 1971, which was the first step in my conversion in my life. It was not my Catholic conversion. That would be 6 years later. It took me 2 weeks to stop swearing all the time. And I've tried not to ever since. You got to clean up your language. The saints did not speak that way. Then you got to, as much as possible, be honest in front of them. Let your children know that you are an honest man. An honest person, in my view, is the strongest person in the world. We have too much focus on strength, physical strength, or intelligence, or big achievements, right? Celebrities, whatever. But I think a person who always endeavors to be honest is the strongest person in the world. And your children have to know that you always try to be honest in what you say to them, in what you say to your wife, in your dealings with everyone else. And I know when we're in business, that's sometimes very, very hard. I know that. And I can get very controversial when I say, even in when you report on your tax returns and everything like that, honesty is what is not negotiable. I have this view about honesty, especially when paying tax, because it's hard. No one, put your hand up if you like paying tax. Normal, all right? Jesus was the greatest politician in history because only he could be in the Middle East and tell people to pay taxes to Caesar and get away with it, right? And he wasn't punished for that, right? He still had a great following after telling people to pay taxes to Caesar. Now, though some were scandalized, the Jewish authorities, I believe if you're honest in your financial dealings, God will bless you. I really, really believe that. Be strong in honesty. Be strong in your language. Be strong in all your life dealings. What else can I say there? Integrity, also moral integrity. Fidelity in your marriage. Fidelity to one woman all your life. So integrity includes, not having lustful thoughts about other women, looking at pornography, engaging in adultery, whatever. Now, this plagues the human condition. This plagues men. If we are in this situation, well, don't think you're the only rotten apple in the box. Most men have this issue. Every man has temptation. Every man is vulnerable. Most men fall to this. When you fall, what do? Give up? No, the church is there. The sacrament of reconciliation is there. And there's good people who have a balanced view of the faith, know that we're all weak and sinners, and there's no priest that I've ever been to who judges you to condemn you in the confessional. So integrity in the moral life is paramount. You want your children to grow up, to be happy, to get married one day, to stay married, to be faithful in marriage, to have children, so you can be grandchildren, have a great or extended family. You have to model that morality. And if for any reason any of you maybe have a failing in that area, no one is going to condemn you to death or or permanently condemn you there. But you need to be enlightened to know that you've got to come back on the right path, and the church is there to help you, even though that will be a great struggle sometimes. I know people who've struggled immensely against pornography. And they fall constantly, but at least they know it's wrong and they try to fight it. And when they fall, they go back to confession. So integrity in your life is so important. And one day, you have to practice integrity to the point where one day your children might say to you, or even if they don't say to you, your children will think that you are their greatest hero. And that's how it has to be. You have to be the greatest hero to your children. That's natural. That's how it ought to be. We're not supposed, naturally speaking, schools and universities only exist for what reason? To support the role of the parents. You are the chief teacher. You are the chief exemplar. And your children, naturally speaking, should regard you as their greatest hero. But like any other young people, they're going to see through you with X-ray eyes. And if you don't practice integrity, they will hammer you for it as they get older, one way or another. If you're trying to put rules on them as they're growing out about going out, who they're dating, what time they come back, what they're doing while they're dating, and they know you weren't like that or you're not like that now, they're not going to listen to you. That's one reason why the Western world is collapsing. Because each generation since the Second World War is becoming less and less moral, and they are less and less an authority to their own children about morality. All right, let's come back to the point about leadership. All right, I'm comfortable to say publicly that the man is the head of the woman, that the husband is the head of the wife, that the father is the head of the family. I'm very comfortable to say that. Why? Even though we have a deluge operating in the other direction. I'm comfortable to say it for two reasons. One, because it's in Scripture. It's what St Paul says in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 23, if you want to be precise. The man is the head of the woman. But do we leave it there? The husband's the head of the wife. But do we leave it there? St Paul elaborates on it. Some of you will be very familiar with this passage. He said that Christ, the husband, should love the wife as Christ loved the church. How did Christ love the church? He died for the church. The church is his bride. The church is his spouse. It's born from his side on the cross when he's dying for it. The spear that went through his right side came forth from that spot, blood and water. The sacraments of baptism and the Eucharist that give birth to the church and feed the church. The church is his spouse. So Christ's leadership of the church, and the church is not a democracy. Christ is a king. He's not a politician that comes and goes, that's voted in or out by anybody. He is king. He's king of heaven, king of earth, king of the church. He's head of the church. The church is his spouse, and he died for it. He sacrificed himself for it. So our leadership is a sacrificial leadership. You know, you see these modern families where the parents try and push the kids out of the house as soon as possible. Right? Because there's a selfishness there. You know, go out and I'm not looking after you anymore. You're old enough, get a job, go live on your own. I think our culture is fortunately not that decayed as many Western cultures are. The example of the authentic parent, the authentic husband, the authentic father, is that they exist for the betterment of everyone else in the family. I think we all know that instinctively. I don't think any of you work just for yourself. None of you work just to accumulate property and wealth and money and bank accounts and superannuation accounts, all that just for yourself. instinctively you're doing it, but you're doing it for everyone else and their benefit in the family. So that's already good example of sacrificial leadership. I think in our culture, and then when I talk about Lebanese culture, Christian Lebanese culture, right, I'm not exalting Lebanese as such. I'm exalting the good influence that Christianity has on culture. And I'm saying that our Lebanese stroke Maronite culture, we've retained this, but there's a lot of decay there still, but we're not as bad as the Western world. That we, like, I remember once I went to confession, and this was at St Patrick's Church Hill in the city in the 80s, Maris Parish it was then. And the priest said, "Do you pay board to your parent?" I said, "Yeah, I do." He said, "How much?" I said, $30 a week. I donate to my mother because she was a widow by then. He laughed. He said, "What, only $30 a week?" Okay. My mother's not asking for any more. Because my mother had the mindset of the traditional Lebanese parent. They don't want to scrounge off their kids. They exist to help their kids. Look at the situation today now. How can any of our children buy homes for themselves in Sydney? It's terrible. When I bought my first home, I'm not picking on real estate agents, by the way. When I bought my first home, you'll be interested to know this statistic, Charlie. When I bought my first home in 1987, it was in Chullora, quarter-acre block, full brick, two bedrooms, right? Yeah, but I bought it for $87,500. I was 23 years of age, and it was 5 times my salary as a first-year law clerk. And my son today wanted to buy the same house, right? It would be probably about 1.6 million, 1.7 maybe, because we converted to the 3-bedroom. But even if it stayed 2 bedrooms, say it'd be about 1.5 million. It would be nearly 20 times the first year's salary of a first-year engineer. That's the crisis we're in now. How can our children, grandchildren, buy homes for themselves in Sydney? Well, we have to be sacrificial parents to help them now. We always have been as a culture, but now more than ever. So we have part of our headship, our leadership in the family, role modeling, except providing, is that we have to help them buy homes and do that unselfishly. Their money is their money. And Western culture has forgot about that. They don't care. You know, reason I'll tell you something controversial. One reason why property values have just gone skyrocketing since the early 70s. I heard a lecture by a professor, economics professor from UTS about 25 years ago on this topic, and he showed the graphs. He said it's because of the contraceptive pill. How? Because from the late 60s onwards, or early 60s onwards, families are shrinking. People are having less kids, and the contraceptive pill facilitates that more easily. And they're having more years of double income. So households have more wealth and less expenses, so they can turn up at auctions and bid more and drive the price of homes up beyond more than, it used to double every 10 years. Now it's doubling every 5 years. Anyway, the point I'm making is not an economics point. It's that fatherhood leadership is about service, sacrifice, suffering for the other. And part of that now in the economic realm is to help our children more than ever have their own households, their own homes. Here's another point about fatherhood, marriage. Most people, when we get married, this is the normal way of thinking, and it's not wrong. This is the normal way. This is how I was thinking when I got married. I'm getting married to someone for my happiness. That's good. There's nothing wrong with that. The wife, the bride is thinking, I'm getting married for my happiness. This is the right person for my happiness. I'm thinking, this is the right person for my happiness. I'm getting married because she's going to make me happy. She's thinking, I'm getting married because he's going to make me happy. That's okay. Am I criticizing that? No. But I'm thinking, in theory, there's a higher a more perfect way of thinking for people entering into marriage, and once they're in marriage, how they live that out. This is the perfect way of thinking. I'm getting married to make her happy. The bride should be thinking, I'm getting married to make him happy. So they're entering into the marriage with a sacrificial mindset. I'm marrying the other to make them happy. It's this mentality of sacrifice and self-giving, which is extremely difficult and ordinarily not natural. This is the highest form of love and the highest form of leadership, where we're going into something sacrificial for the benefit of the other. And in the future, when you start having children, I'm having children not for my own glory, not so I can show off and talk about my children to others and boast about their achievements and whatever. That can be part of it, but it's an inferior part. I'm having children, so as their parents, I'm going to serve and suffer and sacrifice for them. And I'm going to do what is necessary to help them be happy in this world and get to heaven in the next. That's the highest, most perfect mindset. Do I live that? Should I live that? Am I sometimes like that? Am I sometimes not like that? We're imperfect. The ideal is very difficult. I don't live the ideal. Probably none of us live the ideal. But the ideal should still be there as an inspiration. So that at times we can live that ideal and be better. So after a talk like this, you're not leaving thinking, oh gosh, I'm hopeless, all those things he said. He said fatherhood, keeping it simple, is harder than ever. Oh, at least leave tonight thinking there are ways I can be better. There's ways I can do a little bit more here or there. There's ways I can be a better example, a better inspiration. There's ways I can be less selfish, more loving, more sacrificial. That's the simple part, focusing on yourself, right? All right, that's the first phase, first of the two parts, all right? Any comments or questions at this stage? Please, don't hold back.
Do you normally expect anything in return? Have you expect anything in return?
Don't. Just expect respect and love. Your children, I've said it to my own kids. All I want is respect and love. They have to give that. If you're being the servant leader, the suffering, sacrificial father, parent, husband, they are obliged to show respect and honor you. So the commandment says, honor your father and your mother. They'll better and more easily do that when they really love you, and they love you just not naturally, because they love you because they really respect you for your goodness, your modeling, your example, your kindness, your generosity. Now, it's not just that. We live in a difficult world where we have to put rules in place. If we don't have rules, things will fall apart. This beautiful ideal we're talking about cannot be sustained without rules. Adam failed because he didn't protect the garden's boundaries. He let the enemy in and turn everything upside down. You're the Adam in your garden. You got your home, your leadership, you got to guard it. Now, there's different ways to guard it. The first way is to make sure what's coming in. You should have from the very beginning when you've got children, you've got to make it clear that the culture in this home is not, there are things that are allowed in, there are things that are not. We're not letting the serpents in. And the serpents will come in via television, a lot of popular music, not all of it. Not all television's bad, right? We'll come up to that discernment in a moment. How do the serpents get in? Through the media organs. It used to be just TV and radio. It was simpler then. The newspapers, it was simpler to control. But even then, most families weren't doing it. Now you've got more difficult things. This iPhone. Who are the people that had the most impact on human behavior in history? Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, and Estefan Ayub, because that's his original name. He's Syrian. Steve Jobs was Syrian. His dad's Syrian, right? The father abandoned him, however, and he changed his name to Steve Jobs. Ayub. He's an Ayub. These are the men who had the greatest impact on human behavior. Okay, back to the point. The serpents can come into the home now more easier than ever. So you've got to have some gatekeeping rules. Like, from the beginning, I took control of the remote. Sometimes I changed it on my wife. You're not watching that. It's porno. Out. Right? She wasn't watching porno. She's watching movies where sometimes immoral scenes happen. Turn it off. Change it. Right? Okay? All right. Yeah. Right. Hey, what was that? Rockbox. Yeah, exactly right. Okay. Now, and you can turn off TVs and radios and, if certain magazines came into the house, straight into the bin, right? The yellow one, right? Okay. Yeah. But what you have to do more than that, we have to be smarter than that. We have to do that. You have to have a gatekeeping role. But more important than that is that you have to explain to your children why you do this. They have an understanding. Because guess what? You're not going to be over their shoulders 24/7. You're not going to be at home most of the day. You're not going to be around every day. So what happens then? You've trained your children understand why you do this. And they agree with it in principle. So that when you're not around, they are doing the gatekeeping for themselves. Now, one of my children's a bit difficult, okay? That's another thing about parenthood. My friend told me decades ago, Robert, not all your children are going to be the same. Now, that's true. It's true for every family. And one of my children's a bit different, but I was so proud one day when she didn't know I was in the back of the house, and she's watching TV, and when an immoral sex scene turned up, she just got the remote and changed the channel. And I was very proud of that. And that's where we have to lead our family towards. Yeah, have the gatekeeping rules. When you see something, you've got to drive the demon out, right? But as I said, when you're not around, your family understands why you do what you do, and they agree with it. So that when you're not around, they are doing it. So, when your kids have got those things in their ears that drive me crazy, because every time I'm calling one of my kids, they can't hear me, right? And I say to them, one day I'll be dying of a heart attack and no one's going to come and help me. Okay? All right? Okay? So, when they've got those earpods on, when they're looking at Instagram scrolls, when they're whatever, TikTok, TokTik, or whatever it is, they are self-managing. They're self-governing. They've learned, they understand why, and they are monitoring the system or the whole process for themselves. Also, this is what I would recommend as a parent if you've still got young children who are not yet adults. Again, I'm in need of this talk as much as anyone else in this room. Don't over-regulate your children to the point where they feel they lose their freedom. My older daughter once said to me when I'm taking her to school here, she said, "Oh, Dad, you're not like the other parents. You don't force your children to do certain subjects at school." And I said, "That's because I'm a teacher. And I understand what teaching is." as your children are growing up, don't micromanage them. Just have one basic rule with respect to what subjects they choose at school, what course they want to study at uni, what trade they want to go into, what business they want to enter into. Just have one basic rule. You are free to do whatever you want, so long as it is not illegal or immoral. Now, for Lebanese, that might put a lot of restrictions on someone. But it's a general rule. What you're doing there, you're putting boundaries, but you are extending freedom to them. They want to be free. They want to make decisions. I remember when I'm growing up, no one's going to tell me who to marry. I'll marry whoever I want. There was this beautiful Italian girl at law school, the most beautiful girl I ever saw in my life. I'll marry someone like that. I'm not marrying Lebanese just to marry Lebanese. What happened? I ended up marrying a Lebanese woman born in Lebanon. 1977, my mother came to me when I'm living in the shop there across the road where Le Piccolo is now. My dad built that in 1968. We lived there for 11 years. My mother came home in 1977 and she said, Robert, I'm in year 8. Robert, the monks are thinking of starting a high school here. Would you go to it? You know what I said? I'm not going to any WOG school. What happens? I spent 15 years of the best years of my life in that school. And I'll do it again. Life has the river of life flows in unexpected ways. Okay, back on the point. Give them the freedom. Don't make them feel like you control every aspect of their lives. You're making decisions. You're doing this subject at school. You're doing this elective at Year 11 and 12. No, you're going to be a doctor. No, you're going to be this. No, you're not going to. A plumber is not good enough. No, you're not going to be a concreter or a tile. No. Let them do whatever they want, so long as it's not illegal or immoral. Right? And be at peace with that. Both of my sons studied engineering, civil and mechanical. Both of them got first-class honours. Neither of them are going to be engineers. Neither of them. That's their choice. What are you going to do? I'm going to start my own business, etc., etc. In what? Etc., etc. Okay, no problem. Go ahead. The other one, I'm going to work for the chaplaincy at Macquarie University. It's going to be low pay. That's what he wants to do. He's following his heart. It's not illegal. It's not immoral. Life's going to be a lot harder for him because he's going to make a lot less money, but he's following his heart. Let your children follow their hearts so long as it's not going to go down the road of illegality or immorality. And the same thing goes for relationships and marriage. As I told you, I didn't want anyone to tell me who I would marry. I marry whoever I want. And it's not going to be any different for you or your children or your grandchildren. It's going to be exactly the same. Do we put some parameters there? Yeah, I put this parameter on my children. I only want you to marry practicing Catholics. They don't have to be Lebanese. They don't have to be Maronite. But I want them to be practicing Catholics. They can be whatever ethnicity, right? As long as they're practicing Catholics. So I put some parameters and I've given them some freedom. Your children will have greater respect for you when they feel like you are giving them freedom. And they understand that you have to have some limitations, some rules, right? That's my advice there. So my oldest son, he's going to be marrying a Lebanese Maronite. That's his choice. Good, good. Practicing girl, fantastic, beautiful family. The other one is marrying a girl who is Burmese, dad. The mother is got a mixture of Ukrainian or I'm not sure exactly what. So she's a mixture. Does it worry me? No. She's a very good Catholic girl. Her dad's a mother and father, wonderful practicing parents. She's got 2 uncles who are priests. And when I met the family, I said, fantastic family. Okay, you got my blessing. Go ahead, All right. He was going to go ahead anyway, but I'm at peace because they're marrying good Catholic girls, right? So I put some parameters there, but allowed a lot of freedom. The last point I'll make, looking at my watch now, is that what I call something in the gospel I call Nazareth syndrome. What's that? You are not a prophet in your own home. Who's heard of that? Who did that apply to? If it happened to Jesus, it's going to happen to us. So you are the leader, you're the father, you're the husband, and I've been saying that for the last 45 minutes. So am I contradicting myself here? No. You have your leadership role, which you will exercise in love, in service, in sacrifice, in example, in integrity, in modeling. But there's something strange about the human condition. You know, just because you are not necessarily a prophet in everything you say to everyone in your household. We have a certain level of contempt for those we know very well. And we don't necessarily listen to them. And we're more willing to listen to other outsiders than we are to those we know every day. That's how we are as human beings. So one thing I did, knowing my own weaknesses and deficiencies, and I was caught up in so many other things in life and didn't always give the quality time that I should have. I got other people involved in the raising of my children. Not directly. I didn't palm the ball, pass it to someone else to do, no. But I got other people involved. So there was one ex-student of mine from this school who went into teaching, and he, secondary school teaching, and he then started tutoring. And I knew this person very, very well. And he's a fine young man now. He's in a very senior position in one of our biggest schools in the Archdiocese. And as he was training to be a teacher, I engaged him as a tutor. And he would come into my house and he'll sit at the homework table of my kids in their bedroom. And I trusted him entirely. And he was a model of faith and a model of good work and study. And he was a great example for my kids. And they took a lot from him. And he was, whether he was consciously doing it or not, he was reinforcing what I was trying to do as a father. So in one way or another, if you know people that you trust who can be involved with your children in whatever way that is, could be tutoring, it could be sport, it could be hobbies, or whatever, and you know them very well and you trust them exceedingly well, right? You get them engaged too with your children. They're going to only reinforce what your message is. And if there's any Nazareth syndrome there, oh, that's dad just going off again. What that good person's going to do is reinforce what dad is saying. And that's going to be working out to your favor. All right, look at the watch now. All of what I said is relevant, good and true. Does it guarantee outcomes? If you did all this, is it going to guarantee that your children will be great people and great in the faith in the future and great, husbands and fathers themselves in the future? It's no guarantee. It's a mystery of humanity and iniquity. I know of great families who all their kids are wonderful. And I know of great families and some of their kids turned out disasters. And it's a mystery. It's a mystery of the human condition and human freedom and how people respond to goodness and truth when they're exposed to it. And what other deleterious influences might have come into that child's mind or whatever that you were not about. But at least if you try to do this or some of it, you increase the chances dramatically of having wonderful outcomes for your children and your family. And again, I'll repeat myself here, my last comment. Don't leave tonight thinking I'm a hopeless dad, I'm inadequate, I fail and all those things. You're not hopeless. If you are hopeless, you wouldn't be here. The fact that you're here is because you care and you believe. And I'm here, if I was listening to this talk, I'll be thinking, oh gosh, I got a lot more I need to do. All you need to do, leave from this after listening to this talk, is that I can do some things better, and this is where I'll try to be better. That's the mindset we should have. On that note, I'll leave it, and thank you again for the invitation, and thank you for your presence.
the correct price.